This story dates back 1570 years when several barbarian tribes attacked the Roman Empire. The barbarians and the Huns attacked many cities of the Roman Empire, causing widespread destruction. The people living there wanted to flee to save their lives, but on one side, the Adriatic Sea, and on the other, the Tyrrhenian Sea, blocked their path. They had only one option left, so they began fleeing to the nearby islands in the sea. Once there, they were safe from the attacks, but these islands were located in a marshy lagoon with soil so soft that even a human could not stand on it. Despite all the difficulties, these people not only settled there, but also showcased one engineering marvel after another, constructing buildings, canals, and even bridges. There was no fertile land for farming, no forests for wood, and not even clean drinking water. Yet, the Venetians turned this into the most powerful city. But how was all this possible? How was such a large city built on small islands where even standing was impossible, and that too around 1,000 years ago? The people who initially left the Roman cities and moved to these islands had no proper place to live. The ground was as soft as clay, and anything placed on it would sink. At that time, many advised them to return to the mainland, but going back meant certain death. The barbarians and Huns were nomadic tribes from northern Europe who took advantage of the Roman Empire's weakness and attacked. The situation was so dire that living on these soft islands became their only option. About 5 kilometers from the shore, there were more than 150 small marshy islands, but all of them were in a similar condition. During this time, one of the refugees, while sinking into the ground, stuck his boat's oar into the soil to save himself. The oar went several feet deep and became completely solid. This gave them an idea that later became the foundation of Venice. Trees were brought from the forests of what is now Croatia, and their trunks were driven deep into the marshy islands. After going about 5 meters deep, the trunks would grip the hard soil beneath, creating a stable platform. These piles were driven close to each other to form a stable foundation. After placing the piles, the tops were cut and leveled, and wooden planks were laid on top to evenly distribute the load. To raise this foundation above the water level, special limestone blocks were placed. The combination of stone blocks on top and 5-meter-long wooden piles beneath was enough to create a strong foundation. The wooden trunks, now underwater, swelled and became tightly packed, leaving no space for air to pass through. This is why the piles driven into Venice around 1,000 years ago are still in perfect condition, bearing the weight of the city. After laying the foundation, the construction of buildings began. Initially, the Venetians built wooden houses, but these often caught fire during cooking. Later, bricks were also used. To keep the buildings lightweight, houses were not built more than 3 stories high. A special mortar made from limestone powder was used between the bricks to ensure strength and flexibility. Floors and interior walls were made of wooden planks, held together with iron rods. This idea became very popular in Venice, and soon the islands were filled with houses built in this manner. Normally, cities expand outward, but Venice began to expand inward. Initially, boats were the only means to travel from one island to another. However, as the population grew, the islands started getting closer, and now even horses could cross the shallow waters between them. The most pressing need in Venice now was to connect these islands. For the first 500 years, the islands were not connected. But as the population grew and business activities increased, the business hub, known as Rialto, became the first area to be connected. Initially, a simple wooden bridge was attempted. This bridge, called the Ponte Bridge, used floats to create a pathway. While this bridge made it easier to reach Rialto, it was unstable due to the floats and often caused people to fall. Later, a permanent wooden bridge was built, but in 1310, during a riot, it was set on fire. Despite the fire, the Rialto Bridge stood for another 140 years until it collapsed in 1444 due to excessive load. Finally, it was decided to build Venice's first stone bridge to connect Rialto. The same method used to build thousands of houses was employed. Over 12,000 wooden piles were driven into the canal's banks, and a 10,000-ton stone arch bridge was constructed on top. This bridge was so successful that stone bridges began to be built all over Venice using the same method. Even today, these bridges stand strong, bearing the weight of countless people. In Venice, there are no roads, only canals, and people travel from one place to another through these canals. This gave Venice the advantage of easily transporting goods to any corner of the city. In normal cities at that time, pedestrians and horse carriages shared the same path, causing congestion. However, Venice was completely different. Here, the paths for pedestrians and boats were separate, and the biggest advantage was that one could disembark from a canal and quickly reach their home. In no time, Venice became Europe's most powerful and wealthy city, largely due to its location. On the map, it is located at the end of the Adriatic Sea, which connects directly to the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea connects Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. Even today, the sea route is considered the easiest and cheapest way to transport goods. Ships could easily reach the end of the Adriatic Sea, where Venice is located, from Eastern Europe to Western Europe, including Italy, Austria, Hungary, Germany, and France. Although Eastern Europe is connected to the west by land routes, at that time, ships were the primary means of transport. Goods were shipped from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean and then to the Adriatic Sea. Since cargo ships frequently arrived here, cheap cargo ships were also available from Venice to transport goods to Western Europe, as they would otherwise return empty. Due to business activities, the Venetians became very wealthy. Seeing this, people from neighboring countries also began settling in Venice, and the population grew rapidly. Now, the demand for drinking water in Venice had increased tremendously. Although Venice is surrounded by water, it is salty seawater, which is undrinkable. With no natural springs or rivers, there was no source of fresh water. Drinking water was brought from the mainland in drums loaded onto boats. But when the population reached 170,000, water scarcity became a problem. At this point, Venetian engineers had to think of a solution once again. They needed to ensure that the growing population of Venice had access to drinking water. Otherwise, the city's business could be affected. There were some parts of the islands in Venice where construction had not taken place. Deep pits were dug on these islands to collect rainwater, and the walls were made waterproof using clay and lime. If you think that water was stored directly in these deep pits, that's not the case. The Venetians had a more advanced idea. Wells were dug in these pits, surrounded by sand and stones, and tiles were laid on top to create a plain surface. Small holes were left on the surface to allow rainwater to seep in. This water would filter through the sand and stones before collecting in the well. This natural filtration process is similar to how rainwater flows down mountains and becomes clean and drinkable after passing through rocks and minerals. Venice's filtration system worked on the same principle. But the question was, how much rainwater could be collected in such a small area? To address this, pipes were installed on the roofs of nearby houses to directly channel rainwater into these filters. This increased the surface area for water collection. Soon, over 600 small and large filter wells were installed in Venice. 10 to 12 houses shared a single filter well. Once again, the Venetians created a masterpiece to save their city. However, Venice still faced a major issue: sewage. Normally, cities have underground sewage lines that carry waste away from the city. But in Venice, there was no ground to lay sewage lines. Until then, people in Venice would throw waste directly into the canals. But those whose houses were not directly next to a canal would throw their waste on the pathways, which often stank. In the 16th century, the Venetians built drains in houses to collect waste, which would flow directly into the canals. These drains were placed above the normal water level of the canals, so liquid waste would immediately flow into the canal, while solid waste remained in the drain. During high tide, when the water level rose, the water would pull the solid waste from the drains into the canal. The sea experiences high tide twice a day, so the drains would clean themselves twice a day. Due to high and low tides, seawater would enter Venice's canals twice a day, replacing polluted water. This not only kept the house drains clean, but also ensured that Venice's canals remained clean. Since it was salt water, it also acted as a disinfectant. Even today, Venice's sewage system works in the same way. It is astonishing that the engineering marvels used to build Venice 1,000 years ago are still functioning today. The building foundations, canals, bridges, and sewage system are all still in place. Let me also tell you that Venice is slowly sinking into the ground. This is a natural process, and every year the city sinks by 1 to 2 millimeters. Venice is the only city in the world where there are no cars or motorcycles. Every year, the city experiences floods known as acqua alta. During winters, the water level rises significantly, and often walkways are submerged. Every year, 6 million people visit Venice, but the local population is now less than 50,000. We hope you will like and share this video. Thank you very much for your loving comments, and we'll see you in the next fantastic video.